Hi everyone. Today we are starting I'm not even so sure what week this is, but we're going to start the assignments that finish up a Module 3 and start Module 4. So I am in here. I'm going to click Module 3. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to go over here. So here is the assignment. This is the scheduled activities. We are looking at the assignments that are due November 18th. That'll be a week from today. That's going to be do everything in part 3 of Module 3 and part 1 of Module 4. As you can see, it's your typical thing. We've got 3 things to study, and we have a quiz, and that'll be this video, and I'm going to produce another video that's the beginning of Module 4. That's 3 things to study, and then you have an assignment called problem solving. So let's jump out of here and go back over here real fast. There it is. Hold on, there we go. And to get there, we're going to go to Module 3. And once we're in Module 3, we're going to scroll down here to Study Activities. And once we're in Study Activities, we're going to scroll down to Part 3. That'll be this video. Now, this is a little bit different. Normally, there's right through here, there's something to read, and we're actually going to have this something to read. This is normally a quick little PowerPoint-like presentation, and then a video, but we don't have the PowerPoint presentation here. This is actually going to be surprisingly faster. But as you can see, this week or in this module, we're going to be talking about exams. We're going to start there. Then we're going to drop down here and talk about evaluating the results of any type of an exam. What do you do after the test? And then finally, we're going to look at this guy. This is Dr. Chu, I think his name. He's from some college in Alabama, but this guy's outstanding. This is just one video. I think it's part 4, but he's got a 5-part video, and I would really encourage you to watch it. We're going to jump up here and start with exams. So when you click on this link to m3s7exams.pdf, it's going to take you to this PDF file, and this PDF file is here's the usual stuff. This is where we got all the information so that you know that we're legally using the information. Here's a great quote by Einstein: not everything that counts can be counted, not everything that can be counted counts. And I have to wonder, I'm asking myself, why include this quote? And I think I have the answer. Whoever wrote this for IRSC maybe wanted us to have a discussion, and I'm kind of fooling here because I have this discussion with every face-to-face class I teach. But it kind of comes down to, what is the value of being tested? And if we were face-to-face, I would ask you, what's the purpose, what's the value of being tested? And I get lots of answers. Most of the time it comes down to students saying, well, the teacher needs to know how well we are learning the material, and that's mostly it. But then it leads to the next question, which would be, why do you suppose you get evaluated the way you do? And then I get a look on the face of students like I'm changing a dog's water bowl. But somebody finally says, you mean the types of questions we get? And I say, yeah, well, it's not just that, but sure. I mean, suppose you're taking a paper, a computer-based test. Why do you get the types of questions that you get? And then I'll always say, because it's fast, it's easy, and that's true. Most teachers use what we call objective questions. That's the matching multiple choice, true, false, fill in the blank, because they're easy to grade. And that's why you get most of the test questions that you get, because they're easy to grade. The subjective questions, such as the short and long response or essay questions, these are difficult, and it takes an instructor a very long time. And if you start adding that up, in my face-to-face or in my high school biology classes, I have 150 students, and if I spent 5 minutes a week grading, that's 750 minutes, or over 6 hours a week, and total, and that's only spending 5 minutes per student. It tends to add up. So instructors tend to take an easy route when it comes to assessment. Sadly, that's typically not the easiest type of an assessment for a student who is truly working to complete. If believe it or not, if you're really focused on the class and you really know the material, it's easier for you to show how well you know the material by using some type of subjective test. And most people think that means long or short response. But go back a few questions that I asked these students, and I want you to think about that. Everything they answered was based around a paper test or a computer test. Is that the only way to evaluate? And the answer, of course, is no. In this class even, I'm going to be asking you to produce something at the end, and that's kind of your final exam, is to produce this final presentation. And in previous years, that would have included presenting it in front of class. But we don't present now. But that's a form of evaluation. How well do you produce this document or this presentation? If you've ever been in a class that does labs, I teach a lot of labs, and so I'll do an individual portion of the lab where I go to an individual student and say, focus that microscope on that particular part of the cell or something, and if they do, they get a good grade because I'm watching them as they use the microscope and I've taught them how to do it. That's an evaluation as well. And so there's lots of ways to evaluate projects, presentations, performance. They don't all start with a P, but typically most instructors don't do those because they are time consuming, they're difficult. I don't know. Do we even need to be tested is a question that has always been put around education. And there are lots of people, I know lots of very intelligent people who suggest that perhaps we shouldn't test, or at least perhaps we shouldn't test as much. Now, you may be thinking, oh yeah, man, that's how it should be, but the real answer to that is if we agree that we shouldn't be testing so much, then that assumes that the student is learning and performing, and they're going to take responsibility on the back end for not being able to learn and perform. If I teach you and instruct you as well as I can, and then you go out into the real world and can't perform, if we have that type of a situation where we have less testing, less accountability for the student, then that puts all the onus on the student to perform once they are trying to apply the information. And a lot of students don't want that. So the colleges and universities and schools, we've all just over the years kind of developed this form of examination. I do not think it's the best thing to do, but I think it's the best thing to do for where we are right now. Colleges have a job, that is to produce a functional employee or entrepreneur or whatever you're going to be, to go out into the world and perform. Okay, to go out into the world and to apply the knowledge you learned at college. That rhymes. But if you are putting on your transcript or on your resume that you're a graduate of Indian River State College student or School of Nursing, that should carry some weight. That, or whatever you're going, but I'm just using it as an example, that should carry some weight. You should be able to walk into a medical facility with confidence, knowing that the Indian River State College has produced in you a quality student through the accommodation that we've made, not the accommodation, but the accountability that we've put upon you by giving you exams. As a result, the only way for you to get the degree from Indian River State College School of Nursing is to pass through all of these exams. There are other nursing schools that are easier to graduate from. However, guess what? When you go into a hospital setting or another medical facility setting and they see that you are a graduate of one of these other schools, I'm not going to give you any names, but they tend to think that you have been put through a less rigorous training than what you do at IRSC. IRSC is, in my opinion, and I have a pretty good opinion on this, but in my opinion, IRSC has the most rigorous nursing program on the Treasure Coast. If you graduate from that, because of its rigor, because of its accountability, because of the exams that they put you through, for whatever they are, then those exams are making your reputation better. You are able to get through it, is what it basically means. So exams are important. I don't like giving them. I don't like grading them. I certainly don't like when my students don't pass them. And I do have a slightly different philosophy on exams, and I think we should adopt a slightly different philosophy of the not yet type of an attitude. If you remember Dr. Dweck talking about not yet, you didn't fail, you're just not there yet. And now I think that if we adopted that approach to teaching, I think we would see a better, just a better overall result. Hey, you didn't pass it. It doesn't mean you're stupid. It doesn't mean you're going to fail. It doesn't mean you're going to, peel shrimp the rest of your life as a job. What it does mean is that you need to get back in there and let's work on it just a little bit more. You're not there yet. Okay. So reflect on that as you go through this idea of examinations. Examinations are always going to be there. Okay. So what we can do is we can either fight them, dread them, or we can adapt a growth mindset about them and incorporate them into our routine. We know we're going to be evaluated. We know we're going to be tested. So what does that mean? Okay. So let's go through here and answer some of these questions. Yes or no, I do well on exams. I'm one of those yes people. I'm one of those people that would rather just go straight to the test. I believe I could almost pass your class just by taking the tests. I don't need to do anything else. I don't need homework. I'll sit through your lectures. I don't need to take your notes. That's me personally. And I actually did that quite a bit through college. I will say this, I finally, towards the end of my master's degree, I started hitting some classes that were challenging to me. And as a result, I did have to do more than just prepare for the exams. But in general, that's me. Okay, I do well on exams. How about you? Are you a person that doesn't do well on exams? I just got an email from one of my high school students saying, I don't understand how I'm not passing this class. And I do well on the information. I do well on everything else, but when I sit down to take the test, I just can't seem to pass it. And she and I are going to have a discussion after I make this video about that very thing. Okay, some people do well on exams, some people don't. Neither is an excuse to not prepare. Okay, exams make me very nervous and anxious. Is that a yes or no for you? For me, that'd be a no. I could care less. I've got a major exam next week that I'm taking for care less is kind of a harsh term, but I'm going to be trying to pass another state certification, and I've taken several practice tests and sailed through them with no problem. I'm not nervous at all about tests. They don't make me anxious. I know that here, let me tell you something about this. Okay, if you get nervous and anxious, and we're going to talk a lot about this in a minute, but you're forgetting the value of the test. You have built up in your mind to make this test far more valuable than it is. It is not a reflection on who you are. It is not a reflection on what kind of a human being you are. It's just one exam, one day. And that really helps. I've found that really helps some people who get highly anxious about things, is to just stop and put it into perspective. If you find yourself to be highly anxious and nervous about a test, stop and put it in perspective. What's the worst thing that's going to happen if I don't pass this test? And sometimes the worst thing that's going to happen is I don't graduate on time, may even get kicked out of the program. Okay, put that into perspective. In the grand scheme of things, how bad is that? Now you may be kind of raising your eyebrows right now going, wow, what is he saying to me? But what I'm saying to you is when you build up these tests to be much more significant in your life than they actually are, it tends to create very nervous and anxious attitudes, and that is not helpful. Sometimes it's good to just kind of sit back and say to yourself, what really am I striving for here, and should I be this nervous and upset about this particular exam? Okay. All right, I study for exams at last minute. Yes or no? We're going to talk about what that means and how that could be a very bad idea. Do you feel confident going into tests or exams? Again, that's kind of the opposite of number two. When you get a pop quiz, what does that mean? Okay, there are two types of people. Instructors give pop quizzes for reasons. Okay, and when you get a pop quiz, there's two types of people. Either those that go, piece of cake because I've prepared for this, I've been studying, or those that go, what do you mean pop quiz? I have no idea what we're even doing right now. Pop quizzes aren't from evil instructors. If you are a student who has kept up in the class, you've stayed focused, then a pop quiz should be no problem for you. If you're a student who has not kept up in the class and not stayed focused, then you're going to have problems. But notice who's responsible here. It's not the instructor. I remember what I've studied long after studying for an exam. That's good, because that means that you focused. You didn't just fake your way through the exam. Are you overwhelmed by the amount of material that you have to study for an exam? If so, this may be another time to put things into perspective. What are you doing how are you overwhelmed? Did you take too many classes? Is the material too hard? I have to tell you, I struggled with some of my higher maths. When I hit some of that higher calculus in college, it was just more than I could handle. And I had to admit to myself that perhaps the degree that I'm seeking is not for me, because the math is just more than I can handle. And I'm one of those people who believes I can do anything. But when I hit some of that math, I was like, yep, let's focus somewhere else. And I truly changed my major because of it, and for the better. I'm glad I did it. But what is causing you to be overwhelmed? People do this work, so there's something about you that is causing you to be overwhelmed. The most obvious ones would be I didn't budget my time well. A little less obvious would be that I'm stressed out about too many things in life, and I'm trying to do too many things. or I am allowing my stress to overtake me and I need to de-stress. You could be overwhelmed because you're taking too many classes. Perhaps that was a bad idea. I have a son right now who's taking classes, and he started out, he's towards the end of an engineering degree, and he was taking 5 classes, and this is through COVID, so they're all online. And I told him, I said, son, that's a lot. He said, oh, I can do it. Well, bless his heart, and he rightfully made the decision about halfway through the semester that he had to drop a class. And I hope he learned that sometimes we can't rush this, right? So if you're overwhelmed by the amount of material, what choices are you making to make you overwhelmed? Do you run out of time when taking exams? We have something to say about that in a few minutes. When you are writing essay questions, how good are your responses? Do you look at the grade on your essay questions to see how well written they are and what the instructor has to say? We're going to talk about that. Do you draw a blank during an exam on material that you know? That's just test anxiety. That's just various things can cause that. And what really upsets me, not upsets me, but what really disturbs me regarding my students is sometimes I know they know it, but they can't get it out of their head and onto paper. And there's a million reasons that can happen. Okay. And then here's one for you, and this is a really good question, or a really good statement. I have trouble really understanding what the instructor is looking for on a test. Okay, well, and of course, as you can see, that's a little goofed up right there, but do you have trouble understanding what the instructor is asking on a test? I wonder what kind of solutions we may have for that. Try to think of some. We're going to be doing something, an acronym in a few minutes called Lab2OWL. You'll see what I'm saying when I get there. But what part of the Lab2OWL acronym could solve this problem right here? All right, and then number 12, and this I would say this accounts for at least 25% of the mistakes that I see of the parts where students get things wrong on a test. I'd say this accounts for about 25%. I make stupid mistakes. When I was doing the test prep questions for this test I have to take next week, I went back through and I looked at my answers, and about 25% of them I just looked at like, are you kidding me? I can't believe I checked that answer. All right, so how do we avoid making stupid mistakes? Again, hopefully we'll get to that in just a minute. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your test taking skills at this time? Wonder what that means. Okay, all right, 3 things of which you might want to improve. Do you have problems with test anxiety? Do you have a problem where you put yourself in a situation where you have to cram for exams? Do you need to figure out how to study more effectively, using your time to study more effectively? Do you need to improve ways in which you feel confident for exam? I don't imagine this is a big one for a lot of people because there's many reasons you don't feel confident. In fact, that's what all these other ones are about, is ultimately, do you feel confident for an exam? Here's one for you. Are you overconfident for exams? Now I've got myself thinking, maybe I'm overconfident about this test, this state test I have to take next week. I hope not. I'll tell you guys what I did. All right. Do you have difficulty staying focused while studying? Do you have difficulty using your time effectively during an exam? Now that's differently than using your time effectively prior to exam. That's the studying part. But during an exam, you're given a 30 question test and you have an hour to take it. Do you have a difficult time using your time effectively? And there's ways or strategies for that. Select the right things to study. A lot of times we are given a test that's going to cover 3 chapters in a book in our text, but do you really have to be responsible for every word in all 3 chapters, plus your notes, plus the lecture, plus any supplemental material? That's a lot. And one real skill is being able to pare down the bulk of information to what you know is going to be on the test. How do you find out about that? Do you have trouble answering multiple choice questions? Lots of people do. There's strategies for that. Do you have trouble selecting the best time and place to study? I'm not sure we're going to cover that specific thing today, but I will tell you that selecting the best time and place to study is absolutely crucial, because you're going to be spending a lot of time there. And unless it is absolutely comfortable, unless you have picked a good time of day and a good place to study with very few distractions, unless you've totally prepared yourself to study, totally prepared your brain, internal and external environment for studying, you're going to struggle. And a lot of students don't stop to think, am I sitting in a comfortable chair? Do I need to go to the restroom? Am I thirsty? Am I hungry? Am I distracted by something emotional, like with a significant other? These things are things you need to think about before you study. Do you have trouble answering short answer questions? Do you have trouble working effectively in study groups? Oh, that's such a big thing. Do you have trouble answering essay questions? So short answer and essay questions are here. What can we do? Maybe a little strategy. What can we do to improve our essay question writing? That's where that Lab2OWL acronym can come in shortly. I'll show you. Do you have trouble studying from your notes? If you have trouble studying from your notes, what does that mean? What can we do? Well, maybe we're not taking good notes. That's a place to start. Maybe try to determine if you could do better on your notes. Perhaps you're not able to read your notes because you wrote them too fast, and what could we do about that? One very clear, very easy way to improve studying from your notes is do it in groups. If you and 3 other people get together and you all took the notes from the same lecture, and then you are sitting in a group going over your notes, it is just clearly going to be much easier to do. Okay? Do you take oral exams? Do you have trouble taking oral exams or giving presentations in class? That's a confidence thing, and there's a lot of psychology involved in that. Do you have trouble studying from your textbook? Do you have trouble taking online exams? And this is becoming very much a thing lately because of our quarantine issues and things such as that. We have entire universities moving entirely online, and everything about that is an online exam. This class is entirely online for you. It creates some issues. What can we do about that? Okay, there are a few words more familiar than the word test. All the way from, you're tested from like the moment you get in school. Okay, it might be a spelling test. Remember the spelling bees when you were little? It might be standard reading, math, language test. It might be a lab. You might have to do a speed test on typing. How well do you type accurately? How fast can you type? I don't know. I don't remember taking a typing test anything past 9th grade, but I don't know if they still do that. It could be a physical fitness test, a driving test, an IQ test, a personality test. We do personality tests in this class, self-test, that sort of thing. How about those pesky standardized tests like you take for the SAT or the ACT? There's placement tests that you can get in college and take, like I used to give the silly thing. What's it called? The TABE, the TABE test, or the PERT, P-E-R-T test. These are placement tests. Achievement tests are like tests you take at the end of high school. Or how about college entrance exams? I mean, these are all different kinds of tests. And you know what? There's a bunch more. You have tests all the time. My goodness. In total, you may have taken an average of 113 standardized tests between pre-K and 12th grade, according to the Council of the Great City Schools, which study these urban districts. Now, urban districts, a lot of times colleges, high schools, and school districts think that the best way to improve learning is to increase testing. I don't agree with that, but that's what we're seeing lately. And so 113 times that you're tested between K and 12th grade, that's like 8 or 9 tests a year. These are standardized pre-written tests that have high stakes. That's just too much. Okay, a few years ago they gave 401 unique tests across 66 different subjects in large areas. That's a lot of testing. College is going to test you as well. I think you'll find that in college you're going to be taking less tests. The problem with less tests is that you're going to each test is going to have a little bit higher anxiety. In a semester, in a class, I have taken classes where you get a test every week. The instructor starts out the class with a test, so you're tested every day, and I kind of liked that one, even though you knew, first of all, you knew it was coming. There's no surprise. Secondly, you had to be prepared for it every week, and thirdly, each test was only worth a much smaller fraction, because I also had classes where we didn't do anything until the last test, and we had one final exam, and it was pass or fail, and I did not care for that. So, there's a lot, that's, each instructor is just different, right? Now, there are people who get freaked out by this. Whenever a test is coming, they get freaked out. 16 to 20% of students at university claim to have high test anxiety. Another 18% have moderate test anxiety. That can be as much as 40%, or very close to half the class. Half my students in a class could be suffering from some form of test anxiety. All right, I personally think it's even higher than that. It's most common in grade school, high school, and college. Here's the definition: the set of phenomenological, physiological, and behavioral responses that accompany concern about possible negative consequences or failure on an exam or similar evaluative situation. Wow, that's a mouthful. But what they really are saying is that it's a way, it causes you to be overstimulated, over aroused. You know, you're heightened, over concerned about this test. You have tension, you have worry, you have dread, fear of failure. And my favorite word, well, not my favorite word, but my favorite concept is the idea of catastrophizing, which I've already kind of covered with you. This idea that you are going to be, that this test is worth more than it actually is. If I fail this test, it's going to be a catastrophe. Lots of people do that. And I'm telling you, one of the ways for you to solve this, and this is a very good idea for every test, is to stop and put it in perspective. Ask yourself, for every test you take, just how bad would it be in the long run? Just how bad would it be if I fail this? And almost every time you're going to find out it's just not as bad as you think. That's going to reduce your test anxiety, and as you'll see in a minute, that could give you as much as a 12% improvement. Highly anxious students taking tests show as much as, on average, 12 percentile points lower than students with low anxiety. Anxiety, just anxiety, not knowledge of subject material, not ability, but anxiety. It reduces people down by 12%. Okay. Here's some, I gotta go faster here. Here are some evidences of anxiety: being distracted during the test, having difficulty comprehending relatively simple instructions. How many times have you sat and just read the instructions 3 or 4 times before they finally sunk in? Having trouble organizing or recalling relevant information. You know, sometimes people just end up holding back tears, you know, or having to leave to go just have a cry. An illness. I used to have headaches all the time before I started taking certain tests when I was in 5th grade because I hated it. It was math, and I'd always get a headache. And my teacher finally told me, she said, you know, it's because you're worried about the test. People can get eating disturbances. You just don't feel like eating, or you're so worried you don't eat. It can cause you to have high blood pressure or acting out, meaning that you kind of start showing off a little bit because you are concerned about the test. You start kind of letting your emotions come out. This is sad because it is absolutely true. And there are people who get so physically upset that they have an accident, and it's happened. And that could also include things like vomiting, by the way. Disturbances in your sleep, big test coming up. You're so concerned that you can't sleep. That has a very negative effect. It can lead to cheating. Okay, test anxiety leads to cheating, and that's just very bad. Okay, I tell you this: there is never any good reason to cheat. Every time you cheat, it's based on various things, such as you didn't prepare yourself very well, or you're suffering from this test anxiety. And then ultimately, it can lead you to have negative attitudes towards yourself, your school, and your subjects. Okay, so why does it occur? This is a great website right here. I'm not going to take you to it, and I'm trying to go through this faster, but click on this link when you get a chance. You can pause this right now and go do it, but click on this link and you can find out why, you know, if you have test anxiety, and it also helps you find out why. Okay, and here's another video. This video from the University of British Columbia. Again, you can pause this and go click on it, but it talks about some strategies for what to do to test anxiety, and there's the big 7. Ask questions. Ask questions the week before the test. Contact the instructor the week, you know, like the previous class before the test. Stop and ask the instructor, or shoot the instructor an email during the week prior to the test as you're studying for it, and ask them questions like, okay, can you please give me an idea of what materials are going to be on the test? Instructors should, and generally will, be very congenial about this and say, all right, listen, because you've asked, I'm going to give you some hints. Or they're like, remember when I told you guys in the lecture today to cover this, this, and this? That's what's mostly going to be on the test, right? Ask them things like, what is the format of the test? Is it matching multiple choice true false? Can you give me an idea of what percentage of the test will be multiple choice true false matching versus short response? How many points is the test worth? You know, is it a 50-point test, etc.? Can you give me an idea of how much detail you're expecting from this particular concept? I mean, You can ask tons of questions, and I encourage my students to ask questions of their instructors, because the absolute worst thing the instructor can say to you is I'm sorry, I can't help you with that. You know, how about this? I mean, what is the craziest thing you could ask about a test? And why is that crazy? Can you ask what materials you need? Sure, ask the instructor that. Can you ask where can I sit? Do I have to sit in this room? Can I take it out in the hallway? I have students ask that all the time, and I realize, you know what? If they're more comfortable taking it in the hallway, why not? I had a student ask me this one time, and I thought, I have no reason to say no to this. But they said, can we do this in groups? I thought, no, that was for a particular kind of test, and not every test, as we'll see in a minute, not every test has the same kind of value, but why not? Can we work in pairs on this? What's the worst thing they can say? No. Can we use our notes? Can we use the computer? The worst thing the instructor can say is no. And if you do it politely, respectfully, and not like just slamming them with questions, they should respond to you politely and respectfully. Take inventory of your notes. Take a look at your notes and make sure they're good. Make sure that you have totally filled out your notes. You've gotten with some friends, you've gotten everything, you've rewritten them. We've talked about notes before. Set a study schedule. You've got a week before the test. You don't wait until the morning of the test to study. You study every day at a certain time, maybe twice a day. This is the key to doing well. This is the key to reducing anxiety, is to make sure that you have studied well. The more you study, the better you're going to see. The better you're going to do on the test. Keep your diet consistent. Don't start eating new foods. Don't start trying new things, and certainly don't stop eating. Okay, you have to continue eating. Even if you're having trouble eating, find something to nibble on, because you have test anxiety. But not eating reduces, of course, your body's ability to focus. Studying is very much a physical thing as much as it is mental. And don't stop exercising. Now that my wife would laugh at this. I also mean don't start exercising right before a test. But if you're exercising, don't stop exercising. Exercise is a crucial part of your body. Remember, it's physical, so you need to physically prepare your body. Eat well, get plenty of sleep, and plenty of exercise. Stay hydrated. For the love of God, stay hydrated. It is as much as a 10% reduction in IQ has been measured for people that are having dehydration issues. Stay hydrated, and when you do hydrate, make good choices. Don't pick something full of sugar or heavy, like something like full of cream. Try to avoid caffeinating yourself too much. More coffee is not the solution. Drink plenty of fluids that are full of nutrients, or just flat out water. Okay. And then again, make a 5-day study schedule for the exams. It's a great video right here. Health and wellness can't be overstated. Try meditating. Okay. Now you can meditate at a set schedule. You don't have to meditate constantly, and meditation may be different for many people. Some people call meditation prayer. But breathe in deeply, count to 5, and exhale slowly. This works for everybody, for everything. This is a very, very clearly demonstrated way of reducing stress, is just by controlling your breathing. All right. There's a lot of ways to proactively manage stress by breathing and other things. Know when to stop. When you're studying, know when to stop. This is one of the reasons we don't want you to cram at the last minute, is because we don't want you to stay up until 4 in the morning the night before the test. That's a really, really bad idea. In fact, it would be better to just simply not study. If you've waited until the last minute, study as much as you can, but do not change your sleep patterns, your eating patterns, your rest patterns, your workout patterns. Those all have to be done first. And this is something that I find very interesting. Don't try to be perfect. Accept the fact that you are not going to get 100% on this test. And if you do get 100, good for you. But that leads to anxiety. A lot of people feel like they have to get 100, they have to get an A, they have to knock this thing out of the park. And for no other reason, it's just because that's what they've always done. Ask yourself why that's important to you. Now this is crazy, right? An instructor telling you to try, not necessarily try to get an A, but if trying to get an A is causing you to have anxiety, maybe you need to stop trying to get an A. Okay? And I guarantee you that by letting go and by easing up on yourself, you're actually going to start doing better. Reach out for help. There's a lot of assistance for mental, physical, emotional, spiritual help. You can contact your school counselor. You can go visit a doctor. I don't necessarily want you to be taking medication, but it is a viable alternative. Sometimes it's necessary, and I do believe in it, but I would tell you that should be last ditch. You should be looking at other things in your environment, internal and external environment, that will help you to alleviate the stress. But if you're still struggling, then perhaps a little bit of mental health counseling or seeing your doctor would help. It is certainly not anything wrong with that. It's just I would not go straight to that. I would start looking in other places first. Here's an activity that I think you're going to enjoy. Go to howtostudy.com, and there's a test anxiety assessment, and it carries you through those 35 questions, and when you're finished, it's going to give you 20 ways that are kind of tailored to you to reduce your anxiety. And I want you to include the results of this onto your final presentation. Remember, it's just for me, the final presentation, so nobody else is going to see it, but include what you've learned from this on that final presentation. Now, there's 3 types of tests that you're going to be taking in college. Mostly you're going to be taking the last 2. In fact, mostly you're going to be taking number 2. But there's the pre-assessment, formative, and summative assessments. Pre-assessments are given to you when we really don't expect you to know anything, but we want to know where you're at. We'd like to see how much you improve. So if we give you a pre-assessment, well, how can I answer this? I don't know it. Okay, just do your best. And we'll know on average how the class is doing, and we'll also be able to look at your growth as well. When you take the summative at the end, it's the opposite of the pre-assessment. We'd like to see how much growth there is between 1 and 3. The summative assessment is going to be a final exam or a unit exam, and these exams are designed to take everything that you studied since the last summative assessment or the beginning of class and kind of show your knowledge. The formative is the interesting one. Those are going to be the little quizzes or the weekly tests, or sometimes they're like chapter tests, but they're formative. And I've always thought of formative assessments as being moments of learning. Okay, this is just another form of learning, but they're designed to form the information in your head. That's why they're called formative. Summatives are designed to just measure how much, the sum of all of your knowledge. And so summatives are generally the last thing. But formatives, these are the ones you can learn from. And I love the formative assessments, and I would encourage you that if you take a formative assessment, it's usually worth a lot less than summatives. But if you take a formative, when you see the results of your formative, if you didn't do well, don't look at it as failure. Look at it as a place to learn. And then if you look at that formative, you can go, apparently I don't understand that subject well enough. I need to get back in there and study in preparation for the summatives. Formatives prepare you for summatives exams. Okay. Now we know all this, all these test types. There are lots of types of tests, and each one comes with this particular way of approaching it. Most of the tests you take are going to be written. These are the paper tests or the computer tests, and they're going to be made up of things like multiple choice, true, false, matching, fill in the blank, or the essays, shorter, long or short responses. Okay, you know how multiple choices go, and hopefully you know some strategies for dealing with multiple choices. Typically we give you 4, sometimes there's 5, sometimes there's 3, but typically you're given 4 choices, and you know that the approach to that is to try to narrow down the answer to 2 questions, and then just work on trying to find, or 2 choices, and then work on trying to find the answer. I personally, when I take multiple choice exams, I cover up the choices before, and then I read the question, and I try to come up with the answer in my mind. And once I know the answer in my mind, then I look for the answer. And if I find it, then I'm 99% sure that's right. That doesn't mean I'm always right. Sometimes you look around and you go, oh, you're right. I see, oh gosh, I thought it was that, but now I remember it's that. But covering up the answers on multiple choices as you read the question, I find very helpful. True, false. The problem with true, false, everybody thinks, oh, those are easy. But the problem with true, false is they're usually very diabolical questions. Here's a rule about true, false. Everything has to be true or it's false. Now, when you think about that, you're going to find out true, false are not as difficult. Everything has to be true or it's false. Instructors typically don't use true, false. They're just not as common. Matching is really just big multiple choice if you think about it, but you're given lots of choices. You have to match them with definitions or something like that. If you're lucky, there's an equal number of choices versus answers, and then you can just match them together, and you can go through a process of elimination. Matching is difficult, and doing it, make sure you're doing it right, make sure you're reading the instructions. Of course, one of the hardest of these on these written tests is fill in the blank. If you are not given a word bank, then you have to figure out how to do fill in the blank. You have to figure out the word yourself. That may come out of your notes, or it may have to come out of your head. This to me is one of the most difficult of what we call the objective test questions, and instructors typically don't like to use them as much because they are not as difficult to grade as essays, but they still create a problem because you may not give the exact answer that the instructor was looking for, but then they have to stop and think, but even though it's not the answer I was looking for, is it the right answer? Typically you don't see these. Mostly tests are multiple choice matching true false. Then of course there's the essay. The essay is where you have to sit and do some writing, and writing essay answers on tests are really it takes a lot of skill to do it right, and getting ahead of the game and knowing and being a good writer to start with is a skill you need to develop. In college you'll be writing essays, and make sure that you are becoming a good writer. One of the best ways to become a good writer is to be a good reader, but another thing to do is to sit and start writing. If you get to a point where a 500-word essay is something you could do just popping it out of your head, then you're finally getting to the point where you can write. But if a 500-word essay scares you, this is a skill you really need to develop. Oral tests, I had to sit through an oral examination before I got my master's degree, not my bachelor's, but I had to sit through an oral examination, and basically I just had a pile of people sitting there from my department asking me questions, and I had to answer them and explain them, and it wasn't short. It wasn't a 5-minute question response. I had to explain very clearly, and it was challenging. And then there's a physical test. That's not normally something you have to do in college, but it depends on what you're going for. All right, my timing on this is getting very long, so I'm gonna go back through here. I would encourage you to look at the strategies for the question types. BYU gave a great website on that. Strategies for better test performance. This video is a good video, and it gives you this acronym called Lab to OWL, and I would encourage you to think about that. I'm going to go through this with you, but I would encourage you to consider Lab to OWL as you take any exam. And there's always a beginning. Look at the exam, okay? Look through it. Don't even start. Look through it. Do a preview of the exam. Then if you have any questions, ask that instructor, excuse me sir, looking at number 17, can you give me an idea of what you're expecting us to answer there? Once you have those two things figured out, look at how much time you have left. Hopefully the look and ask part won't take more than 2 or 3 minutes. Then you have the budget, which means budget your time. How much time do you have left? And start trying to determine how much time you want to invest on the easier questions, and then the harder ones, like the essay questions. Then you begin. Okay, I personally encourage you to begin. I personally think that budgeting your time means that you do the easy parts first and save the hardest till last. There are other people who do the exact opposite, get the hardest stuff done first. That way you can mop up the easy stuff at the end. That's a preference for you, whichever way works best. Okay, that's the begin part, right? That is just get started. Either start doing the hard stuff and get it done so that you only have the easy stuff left, or the reverse. If you're going to be doing some writing, make sure you outline. Usually when somebody gives you a big essay question test, they include time for you to outline. Do yourself a favor and outline. Now here's the thing about outlining. As you're writing, you can adjust that outline, but have an outline. Okay, that way it helps you to remember what you want to write, and putting things in a certain order is going to help you remember how to transition. A lot of times instructors examine how well you transition from one concept to the next way more than they examine your actual content. When you are testing, look at each question and look for keywords such as analyze, define, evaluate, illustrate. These things are words that help you do a better job of answering. There's a difference between analyze and define and evaluate, and if you are given a question in which you ask to analyze but instead you just illustrate, then the instructor is going to mark it off because you're not doing what you're asked. And finally, when you're done, and oh please do this, when you're done, look over your exam. Make sure you haven't missed any, putting down any answers. Make sure it's legible, and just look over it. Okay, there are some secrets to studying for exams. Studying for 2 hours means nothing. You can study for 2 hours and get nothing done, and you can study for 15 minutes and give you the most meaningful 15 minutes. It's not how long you study, it's how you study, okay? And studying is something that we've talked about. Aim to understand, look for the concepts and arguments, look at what the instructor is trying to get you to do, and don't be hard-headed about it. He's going to be grading you. What's the instructor trying to get you to do? Do the hard stuff first. This will mean that as your exam gets nearer, your studying will get easier. Now that's studying. Study the hard stuff first. Don't save it for last. I totally agree with that. And don't cram. Now, I will say that last minute studying is important, but cramming insinuates, I think I've told you guys this before, cramming insinuates that you are only studying at the last minute. It's an absolute waste of time. It would actually be, there's studies to suggest it would be better to just simply not cram. And then get rest, stay healthy, stay hydrated, eat well, okay? All right, that ends this. We're gonna jump over to the next thing real fast. Sorry you guys, I'm gonna go through this quicker, but one of the most important things you can do is when you get through taking a test, any form of evaluation, take a look at the results. First of all, how in-depth are the teacher's responses to your test? Did you just get it wrong? Okay, you can learn from that. But sometimes instructors go through and actually tell you what you did wrong. Okay, look at what you did wrong. Ask the instructor, hey, I noticed that I got a poor grade on this essay. Can you help me understand what I did wrong so I can do better next time? What did it? What was wrong? Now, we like to blame others. We don't ever like to blame ourselves. The test didn't have anything to do with what we studied. Do you know how often I hear that? Do you know how often? Sometimes I actually disprove students just to make a point. It's got nothing to do with, when you hear somebody say that, it means that they didn't study, right? Look at these statements and ask yourself how this would happen on a test. If you didn't do well on the test, ask yourself what happened here. Were you careless? Did you not completely understand the problem? And then look at what to focus on next. If you didn't read the question properly, here's what you do. I don't have time to take you guys through this. I'm running low on time here, but notice how many times these things start with I. They all start with I. Here's what I did wrong. Successfully intelligent people, people who have a growth mindset, people who are going to be successful in life, they don't ever look around at what other people did wrong. They have no control over that, but they do have control over what they did wrong, and they can learn from it and fix it. So after a test, do this. Look at each mistake you made. Look at all these things you could have possibly have done. How could you have done it better? Things like this: I was tired. Got it. What choices did you make that made you tired for that exam? Wasn't the instructor's fault that you were tired. What choices did you make? Okay. Go through here. What not to do. What to do. Helpful strategies. Don't be the student that keeps studying the same way. Alcoholics Anonymous says that the insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, hoping to get something different. That applies to anything. If you study the same way over and over again and you keep failing, well, okay, maybe you need to change the way you study, prepare for the test. So go through here and do the same thing, kind of reflect on these things. They're just straight bullet points, okay? And now let's go talk about the assignment. Sorry, not the assignment. I really want you guys to watch this video. I love this guy. The videos are so, well, they're not very well done, but they're so clear. And this is just one. This is the one we definitely want you to look at, but there's a total of 5. If you want to, go to YouTube and find this guy, and you can watch the other 4 in order. And this guy's great, and I really enjoy his instruction. And if we were doing a face-to-face class, I'd just play you all 5 and we'd have comments on it. But go watch this, and really take to heart what he's trying to say, because he's a psychologist that has seen people fail tests all the time, and I really think he just got to the point where everybody screws things up for the same reason. Let's talk about those reasons and see if we can head them off at the pass and deal with it before you start making these mistakes. I love the guy. All right, now let's talk about the assignment. The assignment for this module is Module 3 quiz. You click here and you take it. It's 20 questions, and take your time, use your notes, and that completes Module 3. And I know this video got a little long, but 50 minutes, it's well worth the investment. And I appreciate you guys. I'm going to go on to the next module, Module 4, Part 1 next. But I'm done here, so please get to work. Thank you very much.